You must grow to a place where you no longer rely solely on what people say to discern the nature of your relationships. Life is spiritual, and relationships are a spiritual transaction. Every person that enters your life carries a presence. That presence is either sent to elevate your purpose or sent to delay your destiny. One of the greatest mistakes you can make is assuming that everyone who smiles at you supports you. In a world where many have learned to wear emotional camouflage, discernment is more valuable than charisma. You need to discern who truly celebrates you and who simply tolerates you out of obligation, envy, or hidden resentment. People don't always express their dislike through confrontation. In fact, the most dangerous forms of dislike are the silent ones. It's easy to defend yourself against an enemy who is vocal, but it's difficult to protect yourself from someone who is silent and smiling. And so, you must begin to develop the capacity to read what is not being said. A person may never say, "I don't like you," but their actions, their energy, and their inconsistencies will communicate it with precision. Silence has a voice, discomfort has a vibration, and dislike, though concealed, always finds a way to bleed through behavior. One of the first signs that someone dislikes you and is hiding it is the subtle but persistent competition. You were not looking to compete. You were just trying to grow, to share your testimony, to celebrate a milestone. But every time you mention your progress, their reaction isn't joy. It's a response that redirects attention back to them. You say, "I finally started my business." And they respond, "I've been thinking about starting 3. You say, "I got accepted into this program." And they say, "That's good, but I turned that one down for a better one." These are not statements of celebration. They are statements of hidden insecurity trying to dominate the room. Competition in a friendship reveals that the heart has moved from love to measurement. And where there is measurement, there is silent judgment. And where there is judgment, there can be no genuine support. Competition is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, almost respectful. But if you listen carefully, you'll realize that they cannot be happy for you without comparing themselves to you. This is not because you are boastful. This is not because you are arrogant. This is because your progress offends the area of them that refuses to evolve. Your discipline highlights their procrastination. Your growth reveals their stagnation. And so rather than cheer, they challenge you indirectly. They can't clap, so they critique, and their critiques come wrapped in subtle comments, passive remarks, and emotional distance. Another sign is the gradual withdrawal of support. At one point, they were the first to like your ideas, to attend your events, to call and encourage you, but now their voice has gone quiet. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right. You stepped into a new season. You overcame what was meant to destroy you. You broke the ceiling they still sit under, and now their support has become sporadic, calculated, and in some cases, completely absent. They haven't left your life physically, but emotionally and spiritually, they've begun to unplug from your success. Their heart can no longer handle what your destiny demands. Their absence during your high moments is not by accident. It's by decision. People don't disconnect randomly. They disconnect because your joy exposes their bitterness. Your testimony reminds them of what they haven't done, what they didn't pursue, and what they gave up on. And so rather than deal with their own discouragement, they project it onto you by removing their presence. When a person begins to dislike you secretly, their energy changes. It's in the small things. They respond slower, they listen less, they stop asking questions about your vision, they offer no affirmation, and they hide their withdrawal behind excuses like, "I've been busy," when in reality, they've just been burdened by your breakthrough. You'll also begin to notice a growing presence of sarcasm masked as humor. They begin to joke about your discipline. They make light of your standards. They mock your decisions under the guise of being funny. But the laughter does not hide the truth. When someone jokes repeatedly about your success, about your journey, or about your changes in lifestyle, that humor is not rooted in love. It is rooted in a subtle irritation. People who dislike you but are afraid to admit it will often use jokes to release what they are unwilling to confront. A sarcastic remark is often the soul leaking what the mouth cannot admit. And when they say things like, "Look at you, acting all better than us now," or "Oh, here comes the superstar," and then they laugh. Listen beyond the laughter, because the soul has no mask, and sarcasm is the shadow of hidden bitterness. These sarcastic comments will be brushed off quickly as if they meant nothing, but deep down, they did mean something. They were a seed of offense coated in laughter. They wanted you to feel just a little uncomfortable. They wanted to reintroduce doubt into your confidence. They wanted to question your intentions while still keeping their hands clean. But if you are not anchored in discernment, you will laugh with people who are secretly wounding you. You will eat with people who are feeding you poison wrapped in politeness. Another clear indicator is the refusal to acknowledge your growth. You will begin to notice that every time you attempt to share how far you've come, they redirect the conversation back to who you used to be. They bring up old habits. They remind you of past failures. They reference your mistakes as if that's still who you are. They talk to the former version of you because they are uncomfortable with the evolved version. People who dislike you silently are often threatened by your transformation. They had a mental category for you, one that made them feel superior, but when you begin to outgrow that box, they no longer know how to relate to you without feeling lesser, and so instead of adjusting, they try to anchor you to your old identity. You will begin to hear statements like, "I remember when you were just like the rest of us," or "you weren't always this deep." And while those words seem innocent, they are laced with resentment. Their goal is to shrink you, to bring you back to a version of yourself that made them comfortable, because the new you, confident, focused, disciplined, has become an emotional threat to their stagnation. And their way of managing that threat is to pretend that your growth is either imaginary or temporary. But what they fail to realize is that real growth is not external. It is internal. It is in the way you think, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the way you now protect your peace. Another silent sign is when they grow quiet in your moments of elevation. Pay attention not only to who claps when you win, but also to who goes silent. Silence is not always harmless. In some cases, it's protest. In others, it's hidden disappointment that you are becoming what they thought you couldn't become. Some people will not fight you publicly. They won't attack you. They won't gossip, but they will simply withhold celebration. It's their way of keeping their dislike invisible while still participating in your life. They want proximity without participation, and their silence is not accidental. It's strategic. They don't want to be exposed, but they also can't bring themselves to celebrate you genuinely. So they stand back, nod quietly, and hope you don't notice the absence of their affirmation. And then there are the nonverbal cues, the looks, the posture, the energy in the room when you walk in. Don't overlook the power of body language. People may control their words, but they rarely control their reactions. Their smile fades quickly. Their eyes avoid yours. Their body turns slightly away. They shift when you speak. There's a tension in the atmosphere that can't be explained, but can certainly be felt. And if you are spiritually sensitive, you will feel it immediately. The heart speaks through the body. It reveals what the tongue tries to hide. And if you ignore those signals, you will find yourself emotionally wounded by people who never spoke a word. But perhaps the most subtle and yet most telling sign is inconsistency. Love is stable. Real friendship is steady. It is not controlled by mood swings, seasons, or personal convenience. But someone who dislikes you secretly will begin to exhibit inconsistent behavior. One day they're warm and friendly. The next day they are cold and indifferent. One day they share everything with you. The next day they keep you at a distance. This on and off behavior is not simply confusion. It's the internal war between what they want to feel and what they actually feel. They want to appear kind, but their heart is no longer aligned with yours. They want to keep the relationship alive, but the authenticity has already died. And the inconsistency becomes the evidence of a fractured connection. They don't know how to leave, but they no longer know how to stay without resenting your presence.